Good evening and welcome to the Common Council for October 27th, 2015. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Fernsler.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Sedlacek.
Present.
Williams.
Present.
Hildebrand.
Here.
Markham. Fowler.
Present.
Nelson.
Here.
Let the record show we have a quorum. Next item is the pledge. Please stand. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion.
So moved, Walter Hanson. Second, Williams.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? I would like to move item F down to item 5 so that we can make a presentation of the polio proclamation. Any other questions? Brian, that's enough. Oh, that's not Brian. Oh, zing!
Wow.
You didn't even catch that.
He's practicing for Jeff.
Answer that fact.
Clerk will-
I think I've read in the I've been called a lot of things.
I guess not. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Nelson.
Here, or yes.
Hildebrand.
Yeah.
Fowler.
Yes.
Fernsler.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Sedlacek.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Next item is the audience portion where people sign up and be recognized by the chair. You do the talking, we do the listening, and tonight Pete Schreierman signed up. Pete.
Good evening. I just want to take a couple seconds. I know there's a certain level of interest on progress at the old Club 101, now currently known as the Plymouth Tap. And just briefly kind of get you up to speed as to where the owner is, not speaking on his behalf, but just kind of letting you know. They've placed 2 RTUs on the rooftop units. That's the HVAC system has been installed. The ductwork hasn't, and that's going to be installed much like you'd see in some of the newer restaurants, the trendy stuff that's all exposed spiral. 80% of the electrical wiring is done, like for the branch circuits, the outlets, things like that. A new electric service is slated for that building. All surfaces are drywalled and painted, and ceramic tile is installed in the floor and the walls in the bathroom. A little bit of grout and you're ready to set fixtures. Beverage cooler is purchased along with some other related equipment. And in talking to the owner last Friday, he's hoping, always hoping, but he's hoping in the about next 8 weeks. So I'm guessing maybe right after the first of the year, he'll be up and going. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is item 5, items removed from the consent agenda. Tonight we have a Rotary proclamation on polio, and I would ask the clerk to read that, and then we'll make a presentation.
Whereas Rotary International, founded on February 23, 1905 in Chicago, Illinois, USA, is the world's first and one of the largest nonprofit service organizations. And whereas Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus and spearheaded the Global Polio Eradication Initiative with the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and UNICEF to immunize the children of the world against polio. And whereas polio cases have dropped by 99% since 1968, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease, and whereas to date Rotary has contributed more than $1.2 billion and thousands of countless volunteer hours to the protection of more than 2 billion children in 122 countries. And whereas Rotary is currently working to raise an additional $200 million toward a $355 million challenge from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and whereas these efforts are providing much-needed operational support, medical personnel, laboratory equipment, and educational materials for health workers and parents, and whereas in addition, Rotary has played a major role in decisions by donor governments to contribute $9 billion to the effort, and whereas the Rotary Club of Plymouth is one of over 56 clubs throughout our Rotary District 6270, with over 3,000 members sponsoring service projects to address such critical issues as poverty, health, hunger, illiteracy, and the environment in their local cities and abroad. Now therefore, Donald O. Pullman, Mayor of the City of Plymouth, does hereby proclaim October 24th, 2015 as World Polio Day in Plymouth, Wisconsin, and encourages all citizens to join him and Rotary clubs all over the world in the fight for a polio-free world.
Thank you, Clerk Huberty. The Chair will entertain a motion to approve as read.
So move, Alder Nelson.
Second, Hildebrand.
We have a first and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. On behalf of the City of Plymouth, we want to present this to past President Jack Fernsler of the Plymouth Rotary Club, and thank everybody for being part of World Polio Day. And for us older folks in the room, we know how important polio is for eradicating worldwide, and the fact that Rotary had a lot to do with it.
For the Rotary Club of Plymouth, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Moving on, next item is item 6, oath of office. City of Plymouth Police Department K-9 Unit, Officer Justin Daniels and Zoe are here. Welcome to the council chambers. And Clerk Huberty, you have an oath of office to read?
Sure. Sure.
Raise your right foot.
It's everyone.
I'm glad I'm not sitting down there. On that side. Not today.
Good job. Okay, please raise your right hand and maybe your right paw. Do you, Officer Daniels and Zoe, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and faithfully discharge the duties of the K-9 Unit of the City of Plymouth to the best of your ability?
We do.
Congratulations. She did really good.
Normally, we ask the candidate to speak, but in this case,
She already has.
if you want to make any comment, Officer Daniels, you're certainly welcome to.
I just looking forward to it. We've been extremely busy since we got back already, so looking forward to staying busy and taking some drugs off the streets. Done it a couple times already.
Good.
And
Thank you very
this is
much.
only our 9th working day, and I think we have 10 deployments now already, so we've been busy,
Sounds real good.
and she's doing real good.
Chief, you want to add something to that, please?
I think the major thing is I'd like to thank the council for allowing us to go forward with this program, and not only council members here, and all the individuals and corporate sponsors and all our friends in the community, not only in the city of Plymouth, but in Sheboygan County, that contributed to the program. everything was was provided through donations, the entire program, and we've reached our goal, and we have exceeded that goal by quite a large amount. The donation process started off slow, but it built and really spiraled about the end of summer. So, and I would just also like to thank Officer Daniels for stepping up and taking on this program. It's a big commitment, not only for him and his family. The dog stays with him 24/7. I think last night or the other night, as he got home at 10 o'clock, he got called to go to Sheboygan or
That was
someplace.
last night.
Yeah, the other night, Oosburg for tracking. So, it's not just 8 hours a day. He's with the dog 24/7, and that also includes a lot of time that he spends with the dog, for feed and care. So it's a big commitment. It's for the life of the dog, which can be anywhere up to 10 years. So I would like to thank him for that, making this program possible in the city of Plymouth and also for Sheboygan County. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Officer Daniel. And you can come anytime you want, Zoe.
She's ready for bed, I think.
Okay. Moving on, item B, discussion and approval of the USDA Rural Development Revolving Loan Fund Manual. I'll call Administrator Yurgis to give us a summary on that.
Sure, as previously announced, the USDA funding application for funding for 133 East Mill Street was approved. The official announcement came about a week ago. As part of that process, they require that we adopt a revolving loan fund manual. That template is in front of you. I would say about 75% of it is based off of a template that USDA provides. The other 25% is maybe borrowed from some language of our CDBG revolving loan fund manual. The manual, though, is a little bit different. There isn't a specific job requirement. For example, under the CDBG rule, it was 1 per $20,000. That's not necessarily part of this manual. It's different regulations, so some of the things are slightly different. But the basics are the same, is that an application would have to go to a revolving loan fund committee. They'd recommend it. It'd come to the council for approval, and no more than I think it's no more than 50%. The RLF, this program won't loan more than 50% of the total project, and that a single loan may not exceed $400,000. Right now, we do have a minimum RLF loan of $25,000 that could be lowered if the council desired, but a dollar amount was picked. A dollar amount had to be picked just from the standpoint of where you're going to cut off loan requests. Is it 5,000? Is it 10? Is it 25? And at this point, we put in there $25,000. There's also a 1% servicing fee that we'd be able to charge, which would offset administrative time working on RLF loans, and then the minimum interest rate on top of that would be 2%. So you're looking at a minimum interest rate of 3% for the program. And again, at this point, USDA has asked that the council adopt a manual as part of the meeting minutes. That'll be shared with USDA, and then we'll be getting additional paperwork about that program. The first loan would be to the 133 East Mill Street project, which would be at 0%, a 2-year deferment period, and then that would need to be paid back from year 3 through 10.
Good, thank you. The chair will entertain a motion.
So move, Alder Nelson.
Second, Alder Sipacek.
We have a first and a second to approve the USDA Rural Development Revolving Loan Fund Manual. Any discussion? Alderman Sizlacek.
This is a result of the, what is it, 325,000
The 300,000, correct.
going towards the 133 East Main.
The 300, the USDA grant was to the city for an RLF program to
Right.
establish that, and that's 300,000.
Okay.
And the city has to match the 100,000 for, so there'd be a $400,000 RLF pot of money.
Okay.
And the first time around, that has to be loan to the 133 East Mill Street project
Okay.
with a 2-year deferment, and then pay back year 3 through 10.
And then that money, as it gets paid back, can be loaned out
To-
again.
Correct, to other projects in the community.
Within the
It's a little
community.
bit, it's a broader range of projects than our existing CDBG. It could benefit a nonprofit project, for example. Maybe a nonprofit is building a building, potentially. It could be, a loan could be granted to a nonprofit, as well as other government projects and/or business.
Is it gonna be possible in the future to get more money from the government?
Under this
Or-
program,
Yeah.
we would have the ability to potentially apply in the future under this same program and add to the balance. That would be correct. And there have been communities that have received multiple grants under this program. In Wisconsin, none that I'm aware of. There's only a few, I think there's only a few in Wisconsin that have received this pot of money from this program. It's very popular in Iowa and other Midwest states, but for some reason this program hasn't been used a whole lot in Wisconsin.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Clerk will call the roll, please.
Hanson,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Sedlacek,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Fernsler,
Yes.
Hildebrand.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. That could be a program that could, as money comes in after 2 years, really start to be of benefit throughout the community, nonprofit or profit.
That's correct.
And that's a very good thing. And it's good, low interest rate too. Moving on, item C. The chair hereby announces public hearing to be held before the City of Plymouth Common Council on Tuesday, November 10th, 2015 at 8:00 p.m. in room 302 at City Hall. That's the council chambers, 128 Smith Street, Plymouth, Wisconsin, regarding the proposed 2016 budget, followed by consideration and adoption of that budget. Moving on, the next item, item D, 2016 budget presentation. And we have a handout in front of us. Administrator Yurgis has a summary for us. And why don't you take the floor and see what we have.
Yeah, in the packet, 3 documents. One is the line item summary document, and then there's a 10-year capital improvement plan for the city and 10-year capital improvement plan for the utilities. And then I remembered last year that there's some connection problems last time we tried to do a PowerPoint, so I printed out a copy of the PowerPoint in front of you just in case it doesn't work. But right now it is on the screens and it's working on the overhead projector as well. The 2016 budget in terms of overall revenue for the general fund is basically the same as the previous 4 or 5 years, which has ranged between that 7.2 million to that 7.3 million. I have a note that, in 2014, we show that the revenue was 7.5 million. Part of that had to do with the non-motorized grant program that came through the county, and if you back some of those dollars out, it's closer to that $7.3 million. The one thing I would point out is overall revenue really is, even though it looks like it's a little bit down from 2015, overall revenue is basically the same when you factor in that we're increasing the recycling fee from $9.50 to $19, which the council approved back in 2014. So the revenue overall is flat at 7.2 to that 7.3 million over the last 5 years. The local property tax levy trend with capital projects fund and the debt service again is at $4,008,000. That's the same as the 2011 property tax levy. And again, you'll note the footnote on the bottom that the 2016 tax bill includes the $19 recycling fee for residential units, along with the $24 garbage fee. The 2015 recycling was $9.50. The garbage fee of $24 does not change. Total state shared revenues, again, is flat. It's ranged in that $1.2 million range, and I'd have to research, go back and look, but I think 2012 might have been the year we lost the ERP, maybe? I think there was 1 year, a few years ago, where we lost the expenditure restraint program payment for 1 year, and I think that was in 2012. That's ranged anywhere from roughly $75,000 to $95,000 historically for the city of Plymouth. There was 1 year where we missed that, and I think that was 2012. If we would have had that, that would have been right about that $1.2 million. Historically, if you go back, 10 years or maybe even less than that, state shared revenues used to be about 25% of the city of Plymouth budget. It's a much smaller percentage. Partly because we had some cuts a few years ago, and that state shared revenue has remained flat. Our major sources in the general fund, obviously the big one is the property tax levy, which is 55.4% of our general fund revenue. Other taxes, non-property, is 12.8%. That includes, for example, the municipal payment in lieu of taxes that comes from the utilities because of the electric utility and the water utility. The next source is 16.3% intergovernmental revenue. That's where I referenced that it used to be around 25 to 26%. That's decreased over the years. And then, 5.5 in leisure activities. The big revenue there is the revenue that comes from the counties, mostly Sheboygan County, but several other counties as well, to the library to pay for part of the library budget. And then 4.1% is for department revenues. The percentage mix for the most part is the same as 2015 and previous years. I can tell you what the equalized tax rate is. It is going down, and it'll make sense on the next slide, but the 2015-16 equalized tax rate is going to be $6.63. That is down. You might ask, well, if we haven't increased the tax levy for a number of years, how can the tax rate go up? Well, although we've kept the tax levy the same, property values also decreased for several years, and that increased the overall tax rate. Now what we're seeing is that property values have increased, and then the reverse happens. That drives down the tax rate. I can't give you the assessed. We should have it before the November 10th council meeting, but I can't give you the assessed tax rate because I don't have the final statement of assessment from the state of Wisconsin yet. Once I have that, there's an assessment ratio I can plug in and give you the tax rate based on an assessed value basis. Again, this shows the equalized value. This is kind of what I was talking about in 2007-8. For that tax year, roughly $574 million of non-TIF district equalized value. That increased for the 09-10 year to about $600 million. And then we had multiple years of property value decreases that went from about $6 million to $568 million for the 13-14 year. We've now kind of come back from that due to development and rising sales. And we have 2 consecutive increases, and for the first time since 2010, we've had we've had some growth compared to 2010. We're now over that $600 million mark, which was previously our peak in 2009-10 timeline. So what that indicates is, again, we've had some new growth, we've had some development, and property values have stabilized and begun to come back. Okay. Overall, the general fund expenditures are pretty close to similar years. I think the most significant thing to point out is over the last few years, you've seen the capital projects portion of our budget increase. It used to be, I think, maybe 4% or 5%. It's increased over the years, and at the same time, our debt service portion has decreased. So debt service has decreased as an overall percentage of our budget. Cash capital funding for capital projects has increased. And so as we've paid down debt, that's been able to give us the flexibility to put those funds toward capital projects and be able to pay cash for projects versus borrowing funds. I know this is kind of hard to see on the screen for the council up here due to the small size. But again, overall, if you look at the 15 versus 16, it appears it's a 0.5% decrease compared to the year 2015. That's sort of true if you add about the 30,000+ in revenue that we get because of the increase in the recycling fee. Basically, the overall budget is flat. Annual general fund debt service. This on the left-hand column, it starts with the year 2016. If you go back to maybe 5-6 years ago, our debt service was close to $1 million. And then it dropped to 800,000, and then it's continued to drop. And one of the big things that we did in 2015 that is helping us with for year 2016 is we paid off that landfill loan. Remember, we budgeted several $100,000 of extra funds to put toward debt service to enable us to pay off that landfill loan, which we paid off in May. We were able to take that off of our debt service schedule, and that decreased significantly how much we have to put in the debt service fund. For 2016, at this point, the actual debt service that we actually have to pay is the $499,233. So right now, this budget does not put any extra funds in the debt service fund for above and beyond the 2016 budget at this time. If you look at the schedule, it increases to $518,000 and then to a peak at $575,000 in 2019, and then continues to drop off until 2027. If, in theory, if we borrow no money between now and 2027, our last general fund debt would come due in 2027, and then the city would be debt-free. Now, remember, we refinanced significant utility debt from revenue debt to geo debt earlier this spring, and we did increase our general obligation debt to about 80% of our capacity. And we said for at least 3 or 4 years we wouldn't borrow on the city side. So although it does increase a little bit for us on the city side and then begins to drop off, we also have the revenue debt that counts toward our geo debt capacity. And so regardless, we wouldn't be looking at adding debt for the next 3 or 4 years until the geo debt became in a better position to that 50 to 60% level. It's got to catch up, I think. Yep, there we go. And again, in 2015, we funded $610,000 in debt service. So the difference between 16 and 15 is $110,000 difference. And again, we ended up funding more than we needed, partly because we were looking to pay off that landfill loan. We also, I think, sold some timber sales that we put toward that debt service, and also we're planning on from some reimbursement from some TIF districts to help pay that debt off. Just to note that the prepayment and the budget flexibility has helped us with creating a stable tax levy. And just to note that before the final budget you see on May 10th, we're waiting for the official expenditure restraint program form, which should be here at any day now. We may have to increase the debt service fund $20,000 more than we need, because what happens is the debt service is backed out of this calculation for the expenditure restraint program payment, and our overall budget has to stay within a certain growth level. And because you may have seen in the newspaper and in the news that the CPI, Consumer Price Index, has been very small, and for the first time in I think a couple years, Social Security is not getting an increase. That has to do with the Consumer Price Index. And there's a formula that takes the Consumer Price Index and as well as new construction, and it's this formula, and it spits out a number that if we exceed that in terms of overall budget increase after you back out the debt, if we exceed that, we would lose our ERP payment for the year 2017. So it wouldn't hurt us this year, but it would hurt us in 2017. And the value of that is probably a minimum of $75,000 up to $95,000. So what we do this year impacts the budget year 2017. And so we want to make sure we maintain eligibility for that ERP program. And one thing that might help is if we put $20,000 more than we need in the debt service fund, which then we would use in 2017, but we would still maintain eligibility for that ERP payment and not lose that $75,000 to $95,000. So just wanted to qualify that statement that you could see the debt service number change slightly between now and when the council's asked to adopt the budget at the first meeting in November, but that's basically the reason why. Back. Capital budget, the major highlights. Now it's going back the other way. Well, we'll just stay on this one. The street paving, we have about $404,000 of cash for street paving projects. The budget is contemplating setting aside $250,000 for the Stair Park rehab project, which potentially could happen in 2017. I've been going around meeting with service clubs like the Lions Club and others that are interested in participating in that project and contributing toward that project. We also announced recently that the city has received or will be receiving a $250,000 matching grant for the rehab of Stair Park, which would require a dollar for dollar match. So we'd be looking to raise $500,000 toward that project, but there would still be significant city investment to make the stair rehab project happen, and this is part of the Mullet River Corridor Plan. The budget also includes year 2 of the first phase of the LED street lighting initiative, which is $100,000. That's the same amount that we set aside for this year, and that first phase is about a 3 or 4 year project where we're putting aside about $100,000 to replace street lights with an LED version. And then just a note, funds up to a dollar amount needed for a fire truck. Previously, the council put away $530,000 for a new fire truck. In addition, we have $48,000 of committed other funds that could go toward that purchase. So we have up to $580,000. So the 2016 budget does not include any new money toward the project. We're using existing resources that we have on hand. I know both chiefs are working on looking at alternative options and doing a matrix to compare different vendors and different truck options. And at some point, the council would be asked to approve a purchase of a truck. And depending on the one they would authorize, that would dictate what we spend on the project. Although the money we do have, we would be able to buy a Pierce if that is the final decision. And then at this point, there's about $100,000 designated for future capital needs. One of the things, how I'm looking at it is if we have to increase the debt service by about $20,000, that's going to come from this $100,000. In addition, there was discussion, should the remaining part of that go toward the Stair Park project? You could. At this point, the Finance Committee recommended just leaving it undesignated and just designated for future projects. If for some reason we were over on the street paving projects at that $404,000, we'd probably use some of that $100,000 to offset some of that overage because we didn't necessarily budget a contingency. Oops. Next slide, the tax levy is at 0%. Again, the recycling increase from $9.50 to $19. It maintains service levels, assuming a payroll increase of 2.5%. No new debt, and keeps the commitment of freezing borrowing until geodebt decreases to more manageable levels. And then one of the more significant things is the budget does add $32,000 for a full-time human resources specialist position. That would be up to a half year's salary for the position. We'd be looking at filling that in the summer of 2016. And it kind of accomplishes two things. One, it'll help us centralize some HR responsibility within our organization versus having 5 different people work on HR stuff. Some things will be centralized with one person. And the second thing it does is there's no specific retirement dates for anyone in the clerk's office that I'm aware of. But, in the next few years, there could potentially be retirements, and we're looking at this as also a succession planning issue and helping us set up for the future of continuing administrative services, especially around the HR area. Now I'm stuck on this one. Oh. Yep. Oh, yeah, it did go. Enterprise funds, which is the business-like funds that the city has, that's the water, sewer, and electric utility. The payroll increase would be the same at 2.5% as all other general fund employees. No new debt is planned for the utility. That's either on a GO basis or a revenue basis. There is no water rate increase proposed for 2016, and there's no electric rate increase proposed for 2016 as part of this budget. If you remember back when our auditor came and gave a presentation from Baker Tilly the last couple of years, they've referenced the need to review sewer utility rates. And there is a proposed sewer utility rate increase that's part of this budget. You may recall again that the PSC used to regulate our sewer utility. In 2014, we moved to become a deregulated sewer utility, which was approved by the PSC, and this would be the first time the council is directly being asked to set sewer rates. But some background on the request for a sewer rate increase. One is, obviously a DFA and Borden's closure is going to have a significant impact on the revenue of Plymouth Utilities. $1.2 million of electric revenue potentially is being lost from September 2014 to August 2015. That was the total electric bill by Borden's. During that same period, the water bill was $62,000 and about $265,000 in sewer revenue. On the electric side, there is an impact to us, and WPPI is doing a rate analysis on that. Most likely, there'll be probably a need to look at electric rates in the 2018 to 19 time period for those calendar years. But a major portion of that 1.2 million will be decreased purchased power through WPPI Energy. And then the water, although it's a hit, it's not a huge dollar amount, and we can live with that loss for a few years. But the big hit is the $265,000 on the sewer utility, which represents 13.33% of our overall sewer utility revenue. So to put that in perspective, we would have to basically lay off every single employee at the wastewater treatment plant to cover that $265,000. I just put that in perspective because we can't lay off the people at the wastewater treatment plant. We need those individuals to operate that plant. And so the utility in general, the sewer utility is capital intensive. There's a lot of energy costs, and personnel costs are a small percentage of the overall sewer utility. On the next page, what you'll see, and it's kind of hard to see on the screen for the council members, but if you compare the 2013 revenue to the 2014, our 2013 sewer revenue was about 1.9 million. Our 2014 revenue was 1.8 million, or a 5% decrease. And the big decrease there, if you look, is under the industrial classification. You'll see in 13 we had revenues of 951,000. In 2014 we had 867,000. So that's basically where the decrease is coming. In 2015, based on the first 6 months of the year, and on a monthly basis, it really hasn't changed since then. We're looking at another 5% increase, so that's a 10% increase from our 2013 revenues. And then if you back off about 200, if you leave everything flat in 2016 and you back off 265,000 from sewer revenue due to the DFA closure, we're looking at revenue of, between 1.4 and 1.5 million. So that's about a 24% decrease since year 2013. And the thing that is driving this is, if you look again in the industry, is getting more efficient. The sewer bill follows the water bill. They're using less water, therefore their sewer bill is lower as well. And so that's the major decline in usage on the sewer utility is industry. And there's two parts that make up our sewer rates, a fixed charge and a volume charge. And I'll go on that in a little bit, but if you below that, you kind of look at our operating expenses. Our operating income in 13 was only 220,000. If you were to ask me what should our operating income be if we're doing sewer main projects and capital projects to maintain our wastewater treatment plant, it should probably be about, in theory, about $500,000 is probably where our operating income should be. 2014, that dropped to 140,000. 2015, based on the existing estimates, or based on the first 6 months, and then again we also looked at several months after. We looked at July and August. Not much of a change there. Our operating income will drop again, and then in 2016, if you kind of average what the last couple years have been on operating expenses, and then you leave that the same for 16. And you back out 265,000 roughly for Borden's, we'd show an operating income loss of 216,000 on the sewer utility. Does that mean the sewer utility is going to shut down? No, we're mandated to provide sewer utility service at this point. But you're eventually, in the long run, if that continues, you're asking the water utility and the electric utility to subsidize the sewer utility, and each utility should be able to stand on its own. There is a proposed step 1 and step 2. To help with that, the step 1 increase at this point, assuming all else is the same, will bring our revenues back hopefully to that $1.9 million level. And then there's also a proposed step 2. And what you see is potential operating income with the step 1 for 16 would be about 235,000, basically the same that it was in 2013. And then a step 2 potentially could bring it to about 394,000. But again, this assumes water usage remains stable. We've seen some water use decline, and that will impact sewer rates in the long run. On the next page, on the left-hand column at the top, you'll see the different type of meter sizes, and we carried that through from our rate tariff. In theory, some of these meter sizes, we don't actually have customers that have those sizes, but that we do have meter charges for those size in the sewer rate tariff, and so I do carry those forward. The approved fixed charges is in December of 2008 is that second column. The proposed rates effective in December, at the end of December, around December 23rd, is in the next column. And for residential customers, it would be about a $2.50 increase. Well, it is a $2.50 increase from the 08 to the 15 for the step 1. If you look at the overall percentage increases, in the fixed charges. It's actually similar to what the water fixed charge increase was last time. The PSC did a rate case for us, and they approved the fixed charges on the water side. The percentage increase is very similar. The chart below just shows what the potential impact is for different customers that use different amounts of water. The current volume charge is $2.58. That would be increasing to $3.35. And back a number of years ago, the average residential customer maybe used 7 units of water. That's more like 6 units of water. And so the average residential customer using 6 units of water, which is 6 units of 100 cubic feet, or 600 cubic feet. The difference is it would be about going from $22 to almost $29, which is a $7 a month increase for the step one. With that being said, that $28.85 average bill, when we were talking about this at the Finance Committee level, the 2013 MSA Professional Services statewide sewer rate analysis showed that the average sewer bill for a community in the state of Wisconsin is about $32 in 2013. There's not a survey for 2015. They do it every couple of years, but in 2013, that study indicated that the average bill was around $32. Still a significant increase, but we would still be below the average in terms of an average sewer utility bill. I think the big thing, if you look at the water usage and the sewer usage and the decrease in industrial revenue, what happens is that ends up being a cost shift away from industry onto residential users based on how our rate structure has historically been set up.
Questions of Brian? Alderman Nelson?
Just kind of a comment, you talked about, loss of revenue, I guess, to the wastewater treatment plant, and then, balancing that out somehow. I think people should know that the staff that are there really each have specific duties, and you can't, even though you may have less water coming into the plant, there's certain tasks that have to be done every day, and it's not feasible just to automatically reduce staff as a cost savings. It wouldn't work.
No, there's a minimum number of operators we have to have at the plant, as well as on the water side. And on the water side, when we had some retirements, we actually had some concern from the DNR that we only had one certified water operator, and we have 2 operators in training, and we started that process, and they've I believe I think they've passed their test. They both are water operators now. So, the DNR was happy that we got several more certified operators on the water side, and we have the same thing on the sewer side. Someone's got to operate the treatment plant, and as well as the lab and all the testing, and we have new phosphorus regulations, which are in our wastewater treatment plant permit. We have to do a facility study next year. We're going to be starting that process in late November/December here, and we're looking to get an engineer on board to help us with that study. Basically, we have to look at what are all of our alternatives, including a capital project that would meet the phosphorus regulations at the treatment plant, versus looking at adaptive management techniques and watershed techniques to decrease phosphorus, and all that stuff is in the end is regulations to our wastewater treatment plant, and that's going to cost money, and that's staff time, and Mike and Bill are going to be working hard on that as well. So there are costs. Utility is capital intensive.
I would make the comment, Alderman Williams.
First, I guess I'd like to say that it's nice to see that for 6 years running, the the tax levy stays the same, even with the other adjustments, and large part of that's due to your efforts in taking down the debt service, and I think we need to congratulate, Administrator Yorgus for his efforts on that behalf. And then I may have misunderstood you, but on the sewer end of it, did you say we should have operating income probably of $500,000?
That would be probably, I mean, that's we do it on a cash flow basis based on a rate of return. We could continue to do it on a rate of return, but I think when we look at the Highway 67 project in terms of sewer main, I believe our sewer main expenses were at roughly a half million maybe after engineering and the cost to install the sewer main. So, if we want to continue to be able to, annually or every couple of years be looking at sewer projects, we need to be able, there's only two ways to pay for that, either cash or debt. No one else is gonna pay for our water main or sewer main. There's only two ways to do that, and one way is to borrow money and pay that off over 20 years, and it's a smaller payments, or try and pay cash for capital projects. Either way you look at it, either way you finance it, we don't have the operating income necessarily there to cover the debt and capital projects. And ideally, knowing that the Highway 67 project probably cost the sewer utility $500,000, and looking at the 10-year capital improvement plan and future needs at the wastewater treatment plant, ideally operating income should probably be $500,000. What I'd like to see is the council, I think we can ease into that. We don't have to say we have to have $500,000 in 2016, but I think we need to correct that operating income issue and adjust those revenues. Again, you could argue that 25% of the needed increase that's needed is due to the decrease in water usage.
Sure. Well,
That doesn't decrease the cost of a water main project or a sewer main project or staffing. It does potentially decrease energy a little bit because we're using less energy, treating less water, but not to the tens of thousands of dollars.
Sure. Well, I guess I just want to point out to the council members, and I'm sure you've all observed it, that's indicative that even after the fairly hefty increases we're looking at in sewer rates, we're still going to be far short of that ideal number. So that's something we're going to be looking at in the future, I think.
Yeah, I mean, historically, what the utilities has tried to do, and I think it's a good philosophy, is only look at one utility service per year if you're going to adjust rates, so that you're not adjusting, let's say, sewer and electric in the same year. Ideally, you want to try and only adjust one per year, and I think that we're looking at trying to do that, and that's why in 2016 we're saying the utility that is in most need of the revenue is the sewer side. We need to address that in 16 and or 17, and then 18, 19 we'll be looking at water and electric, and you can't get too far behind. The longer you wait, the larger the increase is.
Yeah. We've experienced that already.
And if you if you have smaller increases, I think that helps too.
Any other comments? Pete?
I don't know if this is an appropriate comment, but as people are remodeling their homes, they're installing higher efficient washing machines, better use toilets, all that stuff. So our flows are going to go down as people improve their properties. Talked to an individual today, and they're doing some testing with Kohler, and they wanted, the federal government asked the Kohler company about designing a toilet to flush at less than a gallon. And the engineer's response was, we can do that, but then the municipalities would have to install new sewer mains because there wouldn't be enough water to move the solids.
Hmm.
So I mean, they're getting things down that close.
Yeah, you know, one of the things you could say, well, why did we build a water reservoir? Well, technically, we had about 1.1 million, I believe, in water storage. We use about 1.6 million gallons a day, and the standard is a minimum of 1 day's worth of water usage in water storage. So 1.6 we use, but we only have 1.1, so we're short on that criteria. And also for fire protection needs is the other reason we really needed the water reservoir. On the well side, we've seen, if you go back a couple of years, we've seen some decrease in production from wells. That's part of the reason we needed well 17. And so we still needed those water infrastructure, but overall water is decreasing. If you ask Steve Nordwick at the utilities, I believe when he first started, the community was using about 3 million gallons of water per day. And we're down to about 1.6 million over the years. Industry has changed, homes has changed, people are using less water for a variety of reasons. The industry has mixed. I believe years ago we had some canning factories. Those have closed, so obviously canning factories are a big user of water. But you know, years ago when Steve first started, we were using 3 million gallons of water a day. We're at 1.6, so almost half, during his career.
Very good report, and being on top of it certainly is important, not only to our infrastructure, but to our ratepayers as well. Thank you for the presentation. I would make a comment to the public at large and also council members that if they have questions, inquiries, to get with Administrator Jurgis so that you can get those answers before our public hearing on the 10th, and that is our projected budget approval date, and we'll go through that as part of the public hearing. Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.